So many of us. There's so many of us out here doing good things. I'll just talk to the people who do the good things. That's my.
Well, that's a good part to be in.
Exactly. Thank you. That's what I tell myself.
Alice Vickery.
Well, hello there. My name is Alice Vickery, and you are listening to Cornish Kaleidoscope, the podcast where I go and find very interesting people from all around Cornwall who have somehow used their diversity to fuel their success. And I use the international days and weeks and months of awareness out there as a guideline to find these individuals. And this week is International Youth Day, which I feel like covers like a wide range of topics. So they tend to have a theme. And this year, I want to make sure I can say it right. It's transforming food systems, which is quite specific, very specific, Daisy. Have you heard of this before?
Ish. I think so.
Ish.
Yes.
Sometimes.
I think that, transforming is probably the way we want it to go. I don't know if many people talk about it as such in that way yet, but I think that's the way it should be going.
Well, that's obviously why they've picked it as a theme. Have you heard of International Youth Day before? Is that something you've come across? It's yet another holiday put together by United Nations. Because I did International Friendship Day a couple of weeks ago, and that was all about international friendships. So relationships between countries. United Nations have obviously knocked a few out the park. They're trying to make this for friends and for youth. You, Daisy Anderson, are someone I've come to talk to all about transforming food systems because you know your stuff. So tell me about Rooarbs.
Yes, I'm the founder of Rooarbs, which is a very small food business making vegan dishes from surplus fruit and veg and sometimes other things, flour, oats, to hopefully reduce food waste in a small scale and educate people about how they can do things differently to reduce daily food waste themselves.
Now that is quite a tagline. There's a few steps in there that you've obviously worked towards and figured out what's important to you. So why? I mean, first of all, why food waste? Why was that the part that was interesting to you? Because there are loads of things to do with climate change. And it's interesting. I always think it's really interesting why someone has picked a specific area in it.
So I did a Master's in Sustainable Development at the University of Exeter, and all of my assignments were based around food. And quite a lot of them are based around kind of food miles. And my dissertation was on the impact of food. So whether something had a high impact environmentally, if it would change people's buying habits. And I think that stemmed me to think a lot more about the food I was actually eating at home, coming from an area where I've kind of been quite well educated about the food system, knowing that it's probably one of the biggest contributors of climate change. I think I wanted to use the education I'd learnt and passion for food and Asian cuisine to kind of create something that could have quite a big impact.
I just want to sort of take you back a little bit there when you said vegan is supposedly better. Why supposedly? Because obviously you've changed your whole lifestyle to accommodate that because it is, as you say, supposedly better. Why supposedly?
I think there's quite a lot of negativity. I was getting a bit shy about saying that I was vegan because it always comes with quite a negative kind of backlash. And if I'm completely honest, a lot of the people that buy my food, I don't think they even know it's vegan. I think they just go for it and they haven't even got any idea that they're eating something that's vegan.
Don't tell them. Shush. When you say waste, what exactly do you mean? Because I'm not gonna lie, you said it, and I'm like, is that like a half-eaten roast dinner? Because that can't be tasty.
Yeah, I think that was one of the, when I was coming up with my tagline, which is giving surplus a purpose. We were
Love
talking
that, by
about
the way.
kind of.
I just say surplus.
I came up with it in a car waiting for my other half to come out of hospital, and I was like writing them on kind of like back of a receipt.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of pinged. But
did you get very excited?
I did get very excited. I was like, it's here! But no, it's more, I wouldn't necessarily say it is waste because I guess it's typically things that would otherwise be wasted. So it's not something that's rotting that you would then make into a soup. it's, say for example, my potatoes come from the suppliers of Waitrose, but a lot of them are slightly wonky, or they may be a bit too big for a new potato. And it's more kind of the less aesthetically pleasing and maybe slightly past what you would typically buy from a supermarket. So a lot of my food that I buy is from people who sell food at markets. So my main supplier is Roots and Shoots in Falmouth, who it's run by Gemma, and she runs a market stall on a Thursday and a Saturday. And say, for example, on Saturday, she has loads of kale left that might turn or no one will buy. Then I will buy that off her, and then I make that into other things. So it's more taking away the food that would otherwise be wasted. So the surplus that she or someone else would have that could be used and made into tasty food.
Yeah, well, because you see that sometimes, very rarely in supermarkets. Like I think it might be Aldi or Lidl, where they have wonky something.
Yeah,
and that's their attempt of doing that on a bigger scale, I suppose.
Yeah.
So what do you do with waste? What do you do with the food?
So store it to make sure it's got a better longevity, because I think that's a lot of people that maybe a lot of the things that are the reasons for food waste are because of the education side of it. Even just small things like storing things properly in a fridge, or not necessarily throwing something away just because it says used by and it's the day after. So I think a lot of it comes from the education behind it. So I'll store it, come up with a recipe that I think will be nice, and then make it into nice food, and then I sell it at the food barn in Flushing. So I currently sell at a market stall selling hot food to the public, and I'm hoping to maybe move more towards like a catering side of thing, where people could see the impact of what they're doing when they had food made for them, and generating a bit more awareness about actually maybe next time you buy a broccoli, don't throw away the stalk, maybe try roasting it, or a banana skin you can actually eat, put it in a pancake and you wouldn't even know it's there.
Sorry, what? Sorry, you said that then, and in my head I had an image of a pancake with a banana skin sort of places. I don't think that's what you're talking about.
That wasn't.
You mean sort of like shredding it down and
yeah. So for example, I eat quite a lot of pancakes, and I would normally in the past just eaten a banana and peeled it. Whereas if you just chop the ends off, you can blitz the banana up with the banana skin on, same with the smoothie, and it's edible, and you wouldn't even know it's there because it's combined with the rest of the
Wow. So it's just
and and banana skins are, as far as I've been educated, are really, really hard to break down. So say, for example, you think, oh, I'll just throw my banana skin out the window in the car because it'll break down. It takes years to break down. Even when it goes black, it gets to a point where it takes really, really long time.
Just continuing.
If you eat your banana skins, then they don't have to take years to break down.
It's in your tummy already. Don't worry about it. That's really interesting, actually. So you can do that. I suppose you could do that with literally anything.
I think as well, we have that disconnection between the food that we're buying that's available on the shelf and the process that's gone into it. So the food waste isn't necessarily the all the stuff that comes out of it when it's kind of discarded in the bin. It's the how much water was used to produce it, how long it's taken to produce it, the soil that's used. It's that the whole thing we're so disconnected to, that is the reason maybe why we waste so much, is because we're just so uneducated about it.
All you see is that chicken on the shelf, or that broccoli that's been plucked, and that's it. You don't understand the whole process. So what sort of food do you make then? Obviously, like you've got all this, you've got the vegan side of it, you've got many different aspects feeding into, and I suppose that makes your parameters quite small in the meals you're trying to make. So what do you make?
So originally I started off selling Asian inspired food. So I sell dal and quite a lot of I started off selling curries as well. And I do get a lot of positive feedback from the dal, but I think I'm going to actually take a bit of a step away from the dal to kind of get a bit more excited about what I'm cooking in the kitchen. But one of the things that I'm serving at the moment is a ribollita, which is a Tuscan bread bean stew. So that uses stale bread. So that's another way of, because bread is also one of the biggest foods that we waste. So that's another way of kind of reducing food waste in that way. So making a ribollita, which is a bread bean stew. Potatoes, often make them into kind of roasted lemony herby potatoes. Yeah, I think maybe starting off with the Asian stuff maybe pigeonholed me a little bit. So I think I'm trying to find my way with what I really enjoy cooking. But I think one of the biggest things that I enjoy is brunch. So I think I'm trying to move a bit further that way. So at the food barn on Saturdays, really pushing kind of breakfast side of things. So I sell banana pancakes that have the banana skin on. I'm making kind of compotes from bashed fruit. So yeah, I think I'm wanting to maybe move more towards like a brunchy side of, so I'm not so maybe pigeonholed in the cuisine, but good tasty food. A lot of it's very healthy. I don't really add anything that's, I wouldn't say good for you, filled with nice fruit and veg. So yeah.
What more could you want, really? What more could you want? Like, no wonder you want to go into catering, because I imagine, because obviously your food comes with a message. That's the whole point. It's that people know that is what you've done with the food. That's where you got it from, and it's still just as tasty, if not more tasty, the food you might have that's just like this, fresh all the time. So
yeah.
But how is it being received? Not just by the customers. Like, do they know about what the food is and how it was stored and how it's made, and also rhubarbs as a whole? Like, how has it gone?
Yeah, it's actually gone much better than I ever anticipated it going. When I started it out, I was
as a project, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I was unemployed and I'd finished my master's and I was applying for jobs left, right, and centre, not really getting anywhere. I think, not saying that I'm using it as an excuse, but I think the amount of people that were graduating and then coming out and trying to compete with each other to get jobs,
it's just horrendous.
Yeah. So I think I was getting a bit fed up of maybe getting turned away, and also had that kind of, I've worked in places before where obviously the mood that your manager is in affects the mood you're in, and kind of really not necessarily wanting to be dictated by someone else. Obviously I know that like it swings and roundabouts, and sometimes it's a positive thing, but I think I got to a point as well that I was thinking that maybe I do want to try and start something up. So I started selling cold soups as takeaway pots at the market in Falmouth at the end of January. So probably one of the coldest points in the year.
Oh my goodness.
Didn't really think it was going to go anywhere, and kind of promoting on social media and having a presence there every weekend. And it's kind of just gone from strength to strength without me really ever really expecting it to be that way. Like I was obviously approached by you to do this, and I've done a few festivals. I'm catering in a few weeks' time, and I think it's kind of a bit of 50-50 between people knowing what I'm doing and whether they just like the food. So a lot of people will say, where'd you get this from? It's such a great idea, and XYZ, whereas some people will just come up and say, can I have a portion of that? And then it's often a bit hard to kind of tell them what I'm doing. So I think it's kind of a mixture of both. I think a lot of people following the journey are following it maybe to see it grow, which is really, really nice and supportive. But I do think a lot of people that are coming to where I'm currently trading maybe just be buying the food because it's there.
They come across it and learn from the point that they get there. If they enjoy it, then that's even better, because you get to just tell them afterwards, actually, this is what I've done with that. Wasn't it good anyway? And they go, mind blown. Why Cornwall? I suppose on a very sort of like shallow level, I understand why Cornwall, because I mean, who wouldn't want to be there? Who isn't moving from London to Cornwall right now? And if you're doing things in food, like talking about fresh market stores and things like that, I imagine the opportunities there are more to do what you want to do here. But also, with the project you're aiming to do, I would imagine there's a lot more food waste in London. So even though it's harder to do there, it would be, I don't know, maybe more effective. I don't know. So why Cornwall?
So when I was looking for my master's, I remember coming across this one, and I think because I knew that Exeter was a quite a renowned university for like the geography department. I think I saw that side of it, and then I think when I saw that it was based in Cornwall rather than actually at the Exeter campus, I was kind of like, see you London, I'm headed to Cornwall. So
I'm off.
I think I've also never lived by the sea before, so I think that part of me wanted to kind of try something new. And then I finished my master's during the pandemic and thought, well, because I came from London, so I was thinking there's no point going back to London when nothing's open and I can't see friends and family, so I might as well stay here. I've ended up being here for another year, and then obviously within that time is where kind of Roobarb has been created,
taken off. And do you think it's been received differently here than it would have been in London?
Here maybe it's a bit more niche in that, I don't mean that in like big-headed way, I think maybe it's a bit more niche in that it's not maybe as discussed, whereas in London there's a company called Oddbox who supply fruit and veg boxes, and all of the veg is wonky, so it's they get the produce from before it would go to a supermarket, but if it's slightly wonky it wouldn't be. Or I think there's a lot more awareness about it, and I wouldn't really want it to be received as a trend. Whereas here, I think maybe it's been more kind of, that's a really good idea. Rather
it's an open market for you.
Yeah, rather it being that it's just been jumped on a bandwagon. But at the same time, I'm doing stuff on such a small scale.
Yes.
That it's kind. I often have that deliberation with, it's on such a small scale that, is it even making an impact? Because I might sometimes only be given 10 courgettes. And yes, those 10 courgettes might have otherwise gone to waste, but on the scheme of things, how much of an impact am I actually making? So I think that's maybe where somewhere bigger or having more kind of opportunities would then lead to maybe more of an impact than what it's currently having.
And that would be the next step, I suppose. But you've got to start somewhere. And if anything,
absolutely.
You seem to have kicked it off incredibly well here. So that's really cool. International Youth Day, transforming food systems. You are obviously looking at the very, very end of it, the very, very sort of other side of everything else. As we saw through lockdown, the very, very beginning, as you were saying earlier with the eggs and everything. And also we had just so many cabbages in Cornwall just rotting away. You're like, what? Like, I know that there's nothing we can do. There's nothing you can do. But that's the whole holiday covers everything from beginning to end, doesn't it? So, and you've said a lot in this about education. What would you do?
More awareness about the whole kind of system. So like what I said earlier, that say for example growing a broccoli, you don't see that being planted, you just see the end product on a shelf. Yes, it might have a slight bash in it. Oh, actually I won't eat that, but I'll just chop it up and throw it in the bin. So I think I don't even know where the broccoli head thing has come from. I don't know why people just think, oh, I'll throw the stalk away. I don't even know why is that a thing?
It's a myth. It's a legend.
Why is it that we don't eat?
I've never thought of that before. Actually, that makes no sense, because we eat celery all day. We throw away the heads.
or potatoes. Why did we get to a point where we peeled potato? Like I'll eat mashed potato and I'll leave the skin on. Because I really like the skin and I wouldn't waste it. But we've got to a point where we kind of need a reverse of what's already happened. That we need to be maybe uneducated about it looking perfect, or it's got a bit of brown on it. I'll just cut that tiny bit off rather than discarding of the whole thing. So
do you know, that's so true, because we're taught in school to peel and to cut and to get rid of all the excess. So just like stripping that back and being like, nah, keep the whole thing. That's it. But that's re-education, and it's very cool. And that would stop, I imagine, an awful lot.
Yeah, I think also maybe the consumerism type side of things, that we are consuming so much stuff, whether that's on a food level, fashion level, electronics, everything. I think because we consume so much and we constantly think that we need so much, we're kind of still accustomed to continue doing the things that we're doing. So it's kind of really a change of habit, that you, rather than saying, oh, it's buy one, get one free, let's get 2 packs of apples rather than one, think actually, we've already got 3 apples at home. We're unlikely to get through 8 apples in the next week. So why don't we just buy one? And even though it looks like we're saving a bit of money, then, say for example, we then discard that packet of apples, we've then actually wasted money. So I think it's more like a flipping things a bit, that we maybe don't need things as much as we, or preparation is probably another thing that you, before you go and do your food shop, or before you go out for dinner, you think it all through before you do it, that yes, you might have had a sandwich before you go out for dinner. Do you really need all those sides? Or if you do have those sides, why don't you take them away if you don't eat them, and you
doggy bag,
make them into something?
Big fan of doggy bags.
Big
fan of doggy bags. I will eat those cold chips the next morning. I do not care. I will eat them every single time. But what you're saying there as well is all minor, small adjustments, really tiny adjustments that everybody can do in their everyday life. And you know, you were saying earlier about worrying about the scale of what you do, and the fact you feel like it's too small, but you are doing it. That's what you would teach everybody else to do if you could. It's just like the teeny tiny adjustments. So that is it. It's just small steps going forward. I suppose the last question is, because it's obviously International Youth Day, and this is a specific thing, like obviously a specific theme, but why young people? Why do you think it's important to get, because you yourself are a young person, Daisy, you are in that category. So why, I don't know, why do you think it's important to get young people into it?
I think maybe because a lot of the issues that we've, not blaming, but a lot of the issues we've currently had are as a result of the older generation. I think a lot of the kind of the youths now are much more maybe excited, and much more excited and maybe optimistic about the future, whereas I think a lot of the older generation is probably thinking, well, we're doomed, so what's the point in kind of changing things? But I guess it's a bit like riding a bike. I don't know if this is a good example, but it's a bit like riding a bike. When you're younger, you have no fear about riding a bike, whereas when you get older, like I wouldn't say I'm scared of riding a bike, but I wouldn't go along trying to do a wheelie, whereas if you're younger, you probably would, because you haven't got the fear. So I think it's maybe you're thinking about things in a bit more of a optimistic way than
Has being young at all affected what you do, or has that been a good or a bad thing?
It still feels a bit weird. Like, I still don't think that I own a business. I keep putting own a business like in inverted commas, because it's still,
I had an idea. I did a project.
Because it still doesn't feel like a thing. Like when I speak to friends and family about it, it feels hard to talk about it without it sounding like I'm bragging, which is not what I'm trying to do. It's just ended up being my thing.
Yourself, Daisy. Back yourself. There's no bragging in this. This is what you've done. You've won awards. You've got a successful business that you're running that people want more of. None of that is bragging. That's all just facts.
I don't necessarily think being young has affected it, but I'd say, like when I've been doing festivals, I get my mum and dad to help me, and I don't know whether that, like, from someone coming to the stall, it's like, oh well, her mum and dad have come and helped her, or she's got a friend come and help her. Whereas I guess maybe when you're a bit older, if you've saved money, you have a bit of money to kind of then use. I think that maybe comes with I think that's maybe the only thing, is that if you're slightly older, maybe you have a bit more of a financial backing to kind of get that help to get you further, whereas at the moment I'm still quite young that I don't have that, or if I have money saved, it's to use for something else as opposed to kind of business. So one major benefit, because I wouldn't have started this if it wasn't for them, that I did a startup scheme with the university, and it was pitching an idea about what you had, which was rhubarbs, and it's kind of what I now do. I pitched that to them, and they fully backed me and gave me one-to-one advice, workshops, and also market validation funding. So without that funding, I don't know if I would actually be where I am now. So I think it's also the youth part of it has enabled me to maybe get the backing from other people to kind of help me kind of get where I am now.
You have used your diversity to your success. There we go. I'm very excited there. Well, mate, this has been fantastic. This has been so interesting. I'm so glad to talk to you, and you're well on your way. And it's really exciting to see what you're going to do.